Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Al-Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. In today's podcast, I'll be speaking about narcissistic abuse in polygamous marriages. This podcast is a follow-up to podcast number 58 about the back burner supply and the new supply, and also podcast 61, which is about what happens when narcissists marry each other. So today's podcast has been highly requested by a lot of women. So inshallah, I will do my best to address the issues that many women are facing in modern day Muslim polygamous marriages. So I won't be speaking today about the Islamic ruling and perspective on the subject of polygamy. Inshallah, I'll leave that for another podcast. But there is another podcast that I have already recorded. It's actually podcast number 4. About, red pill perspectives on how women are viewed in polygamous relationships. So inshallah, the next one will be more of an Islamic perspective. So I'll jump right in. As always, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Please share my podcast with people whom you know could really benefit from this information and content. So to a narcissistic Muslim man, or to the majority of them, the idea of having more than one wife as extra sources of supply is just wonderful. Many people, when they enter Islam, especially young men, and they're told that, hey, you can have up to 4 wives and all of them will obey you and serve you and put you on a pedestal because that's what Islam tells women to do and all of that, will set out to find the easiest way of doing this. So remember that not everyone who embraces Islam is an empath or someone who is awakened, someone who is, embracing Islam with the right intention. There are men who enter Islam for selfish reasons. They enter Islam for political reasons, for marital reasons. There are loads of reasons why people embrace Islam. But one of the things that I'm constantly seeing men being told or being sold is that they can have up to 4 wives. Now, again, when you think of this from a narcissistic perspective, you'll understand that they don't see women in this situation as wives with rights, wives who have been honoured and dignified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will see them as sources of supply. Okay, so they're thinking, okay, halal sources of supply, brilliant. What more could I want? No one's going to be pestering me or nagging at me because I'm in a haram relationship or I've got a mistress or I'm cheating. Let me just do the easiest thing and have up to 4 wives, right? No one will blame me because, they think it's their right to do so. And so they will set out to do it in the easiest and most affordable way possible, not because they are willing to take on the responsibility of having multiple wives, but because they're looking at these women as sources of supply. And that's why when you see narcissistic Muslim men who have more than one wife, you will see that they're all very different from each other. They're not the same because each one provides a different source of supply. Each one has a different benefit. One is beautiful, one is wealthy, one has business connections, one has status, family status. One is a celebrity, one is this, one is that. So you will find that narcissists will pick different types of women so that they can have the whole cake. They want the whole cake. And they will find everything that they want in more than one woman. Because you won't find everything that you want in one woman. It's not possible. So they will find their source of supply in different women. So the primary source of supply will be the codependent woman. The woman who serves them, acts like their mother. The woman who will tolerate abuse long term. The obedient, the submissive, the shy. The woman who has very low self-esteem. She's got very low self-respect. So she's always treated so badly by this guy. She's the one who cooks and cleans and does everything. They have to have this woman as the primary source of supply. Now, if the man is an overt narcissist, the primary source of supply will be the narcissistic woman. Because remember when I told you last time in podcast 61, overt narcissists do not marry codependents. They cannot stand to live with codependents who have very low self-esteem. They like to marry people who have very high self-confidence. So if he's an overt narcissist, the primary source of supply will be the overt narcissistic woman who gives him that great public image, right? She's the trophy wife. She's the tough, strong, confident, beautiful woman who is a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer. He will have her as a trophy. He won't have any codependent woman as his main source of supply, but he may have the second or third wife as a codependent temporarily, just so that he can feel what it's like to be served and obeyed, because the narcissistic woman will never do that for him. And when that narcissistic woman finds out that he's taken another wife, she will either use that to her advantage and take advantage of the woman as well, use her to her benefit by getting the woman to serve her as well. I'll come on to that later. Or she will take revenge on her husband, and, it will cause a narcissistic injury, because she'll be thinking, well, how dare you? How dare you replace me? Or how dare you take on another wife? But sometimes the overt narcissist will crave to have a codependent wife, even if it's temporarily, just so that he can feel how it is to be served and obeyed and to have a submissive wife. But overt narcissists can only stay with codependent women for a short period of time before they get bored, very, very bored and fed up. They can't stay with codependent women long term, but they will take on a codependent woman just so that they can get their fix of feeling like they're on a pedestal. They want their fix of feeling powerful, because a narcissistic woman is more often than not more dominant in a relationship with another narcissist, especially if she's the trophy. And that's because narcissistic women in general are far more manipulative than the men. They know how to get their way with seduction and, femme fatale and all of that. They can manipulate men more. Men aren't so smart when it comes to manipulation as women are. So that's why in these types of relationships, you'll find that the woman is more dominant. Now, you will find relationships where the man is more dominant, but that's only when he has more to offer. So if he is very, very wealthy, he'll have the upper hand, even if she's very beautiful, even if she's the trophy wife, because she will always feel that she can be replaced. Because a man that wealthy can get whoever he wants, right? He can get women who are far more beautiful than her, so she'll be more submissive and he'll have the upper hand. But if he's a regular guy, overt narcissist, maybe he's like a lawyer or a doctor, he's nothing too special, no one very wealthy, he's not got women chasing after him left, right and centre because of his wealth, she will have the upper hand if she's the trophy wife. That's how it works, okay? So in these types of relationships, if a wealthy man takes on 4 wives, okay, it's usually because he has the money to do it. And more often than not, if he's wealthy, he will treat them all the same. I've not come across a very wealthy man who is abusive financially to all 4 wives. There might be. I haven't come across it, to be honest. But I have seen that wealthy men, even if they're narcissistic, they will be fair in their finances to women. And financial abuse takes place when one of the women, or at least one of the women, rebel and they become rude and disrespectful. Financial privileges are taken away. That's what happens when women are married to one wealthy man. He will use financial privileges to get his way, to manipulate women into doing what he wants them to do. He'll be like, okay, fine. You don't want to do this for me. You don't want to do that for me, or you upset me with that today. I am withdrawing that financial privilege. So this is the card that overt narcissists in particular play when they know that the women are with them because, they're given a very luxurious lifestyle. They have everything that they want financially. In these marriages, there isn't any other types of abuse unless the women are so dependent on this man for validation, status, money, whatever else he provides. So if a woman is so dependent on a man, like one of the wives, for example, she's so dependent on this guy because he's wealthy, he's made her turn from a nobody into a somebody, and she always falls for his manipulation and love bombing. Maybe she's a low-level narc and he's a high-level narc. Then physical abuse can happen. Manipulations can happen here on a spiritual basis, on a verbal basis, on a psychological basis. And this happens with overt narcs the more dependent women are on them. So the more independent you are from the overt narc, the more he's going to respect the woman. Because he knows if he messes up or treats her badly, she has no problem walking away from him because she's got confidence. But when he's with a woman who is codependent or a low-level narcissist, and one of the wives will be, because like I said, he needs one of the wives to have that level of submissiveness that allows him to feel powerful. He can't have all four as trophy wives on a highly narcissistic level. One of them has to be the more submissive one, and that submissive one is the one that gets bullied because she's dependent on him. Because of her codependency, she relies on him to have a good life. She doesn't want to lose him. She feels like she is so lucky to have this man, and she tolerates his abuse and disrespect, his misogyny. He'll be openly misogynistic and she won't care. He'll openly use her and abuse her, and she won't care. She won't care if she's the fourth wife dealing with this type of man because she's a somebody with him and she feels that she needs him. She will love the lifestyle and the love bombing and the money. So this is what happens with the overt narcs. And you see it, like even with celebrities. You see celebrities who are physically abused, and they're beautiful actresses. They are physically abused, spiritually abused, and they go through so much just to stay with someone whom they feel makes them feel good about themselves. I mean, a prime example of this is Britney Spears. Look what's happened to her. She's highly codependent. In her relationships, she's codependent, but she's also highly narcissistic because she's famous, and you know what that all comes with, all that fame. But in her relationship, she is always abused by men, and that's because she's so codependent. That's because she makes a man feel like she's nothing without him. So when you're married to an overt narc, that's how the wife will get treated, who is the weakest link of the four, or however many he's married. So, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you try as a co-wife to please this guy. If you're codependent, you're the one who's going to get the abuse. And the other wives are going to be treated really well. They'll be treated as the trophies because they are not codependent. They will be narcissistic like him. Even if they're not to the same level, they will be narcissistic and they will know how to manipulate him and play the game, unlike the codependent. So that's the overt narcissist who has money, right? That's usually the dynamic for a man who is wealthy enough to have up to 4 wives, and he provides each one with their own house, and he gives them all like great allowances and all of that, okay? That's one type of Muslim man. You won't find these Muslim men very often because they are usually the elites, the royals, and the rich businessmen. So I'm not talking about your average Abdullah here, okay? I'm talking about people who have so much wealth that they can afford to easily have up to 4 wives. And it's usually in this type of, dynamic in which women are okay with accepting co-wives because of all the benefits that they get financially from being married to someone who is super wealthy and has status as a prince, for example, okay? Women here aren't too bothered about sharing the man if they're getting what they want out of it. And again, that's more of a narcissistic perspective on a polygamous marriage to someone who has a lot of money. So here, as I said before, this type of man is the more dominant man because he is the prize in this situation. He is the prince. He is the billionaire. And he is the man who can, again, turn these women from nobodies into somebodies and raise their status in society. So they don't really kick up a fuss when he wants to take a second, third or fourth wife because they aren't the dominant ones in this situation. And when women marry these types of men, it's expected that they would want second, third and fourth wives, especially in the Muslim world. So if a man is very wealthy, it's expected, right? It's not something that's shocking to a woman when he suggests that idea or tells her that that's what he wants to do. However, if the overt narcissist Muslim man is an average guy, he's a doctor, lawyer, dentist, of that level, and his wife is the trophy wife and she's a narcissist, she will have the upper hand and she will stop him from taking on a second wife. She will be more dominant in that situation and he will not be free to make those kinds of decisions without her approval and without her permission, because she's the trophy. He doesn't want to lose her, and she's more manipulative and powerful than he is. So she's the more dominant. So here you will always find that there will be couples that stay together and he doesn't take on a second wife, even though he's an overt narc, and he does so in secret later, and it all backfires on him. Boy, there will be no hell unleashed on a man like the hell a narcissistic woman will unleash on him for taking a second wife behind her back. Okay, whether he's a narcissist or a codependent, she will make that man pay with his blood. And she will take all sorts of revenge on him for doing so, because like I said, even the overt narcissist, he wants a taste of having a codependent wife who is submissive to him, who obeys him, who just says, yes, sir, So he will do it in secret because he's terrified of her. He's terrified of wife number one. However, it always backfires on him when she finds out, because they always find out. And yeah, she will turn him into a circus clown and get him to do everything under the moon and the sun to make it up to her, of course, with the ultimatum that he divorces the second wife immediately. So it's always the second wife who gets the brunt end of this deal. The second wife is usually the one who is booted out because the man is terrified of his narcissistic wife and she threatens him with the children. She will say, look, if you don't divorce her, you'll never see your kids again. If you don't divorce her, X, Y, Z is going to happen, and she scares him into doing it. This is more applied to the codependent man. Okay, so sometimes the codependent man will think or believe, and I've seen cases like this a lot, he won't do it with the intent to hurt the wife, the first wife, but he will do it because he's so fed up of having to deal with her that he goes behind her back and takes a nice wife in secret because he just wants to feel like he's married. For months and months he's not having any intimacy because wife number one, the narcissistic woman, is withholding sex from him and she's withholding nice treatment and respect. He gets fed up. She does not take his warnings seriously, so he goes behind her back and he takes a wife, another one, like an empathic woman or a codependent woman, just to feel married, just to have his needs fulfilled. But when she finds out, unfortunately, again, it backfires so terribly on him. And this is where a lot of men in polygamous marriages end up losing their children, because she will, especially in Western countries, she will take advantage of him doing this and take him to court over it, saying, you have broken the law by taking another wife, and for that reason, I'm going to stop you from seeing your children. I'm going to take custody of them. And usually the court will side with her because he's broken the law. So I always tell men, don't do this. Like I get loads of clients who come and say to me, look, I can't deal with this anymore. I found another woman and I want to marry her. And I say to him, don't you dare go down that route with a narcissistic woman. You have to divorce her first if you want to get married again. It's not going to work. You marrying her as a second wife is not going to work. It's going to backfire on you and you're going to lose your children. I've seen men go through this in court as well. The first wife has found out about the second wife and then he gets dragged into court and it's a horrible ordeal for him. But because he's broken the law in the Western country, the judge sides with the woman and he sees her as the miskina, the woman who was oppressed, the woman who was betrayed. The judge will not look at everything that she's deprived him of to push him to that. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is he's broken the law. So please, if you are empathic, codependent man, married to a narcissistic woman, please seek help, and counselling and mediation in dealing with this woman. Do not, for the love of God, go and get a second wife. Wallahi, you will ruin your life if you do it, because their revenge is nasty. And unfortunately, in many of these cases as well, especially when the woman, the first wife, whether she's married to a narcissist or a codependent, if she is a top narcissist, like I'm saying, like evil to another level, she will use black magic. She will use black magic to take her revenge on you and the second wife. Wallahi, I have heard it so many times where the second wife or the third wife has been afflicted by black magic made by the first wife, the first narcissistic wife. I can't count how many times I've heard that story, especially in Muslim countries, and now it's spreading to the West. Now Muslim communities are getting involved in this vile black magic against each other because it's cheap and it's quick, and there are loads of people doing it now. There are loads of magicians about now doing all of this rubbish. So, because these women do not have any fear of Allah, they will easily just go to any magician that their auntie knows or their mother knows, and they'll do a spell on you as revenge and the other woman. And you would have ruined your own life and the life of this poor woman who you've taken as a secret second wife. This is why I tell women time and time again, for the love of God, never, ever accept to marry a man in secret, because he's doing that out of fear from his first wife. And if he fears his first wife, it means that she's a nasty piece of work. Don't get involved in that, because you do not know how this woman is going to harm you later. A lot of these women use black magic, people. They do. So this is a warning as well to the men out there who think that by taking a second wife, they'll be teaching the first wife a lesson, and that she'll fix up and she'll say sorry and she'll get on her knees and beg you for forgiveness, and that she will miraculously turn into an empathic wife who you've been dreaming of all your life. You're utterly deluded if you think that. She will see this as pure betrayal, even if she's the cause of it, even if she knows that you've been suffering with no intimacy for the last 9 months. Even if she knows that you've been suffering from her disrespect and sometimes physical abuse for the last couple of years. She won't care about any of that. She will look at what you've done and blow that up to be the biggest problem on this planet. And she will wage World War III against you because of that. Because you've caused her a narcissistic injury. These people have very little empathy. They don't care about what they do to you and how they've abused you and what they've put you through. Oh, they don't care about all of that. But the day you hurt them with something like this, boy, you're going to pay. You're going to pay big time. And you're going to regret doing that. You're going to regret it so badly that you went behind her back and got a secret second wife, because this isn't even Islamic behaviour. To creep around and do something in secret already indicates that you are doing something that is against Islam. Because every Muslim woman, every woman you marry has to be honoured in marriage. Like, you have to celebrate the marriage and publicise the marriage. It shouldn't be a dirty little secret that you have. This is against Islam anyway. Secret marriages are invalid in Islam. I've done a podcast about it before. It's number 52 for anyone who hasn't heard it yet. So that's what happens with that. Now, there are some women, some narcissistic women, who will find out that their husband has married a codependent woman as wife number 2, and she will take her as a slave. Now, you will see this more often in Muslim countries and Asian countries and African countries, where the narcissistic wife will find out and she will realize that this woman has nobody, no family. She's an orphaned woman, and her codependent husband has married her as a secret second wife because he just wanted a nice woman, to live with, so that he can tolerate wife number 1. Sometimes having a nice woman on the side helps you tolerate and cope with toxic wife number 1, because the man is getting his needs fulfilled from the other wife. So it's almost like, she makes his situation easier. She gives him an escape from his toxic situation. So when wife number 1 realizes that this woman is, again, she's a miskina. She's a poor girl, from the village. She's got no family. She's got no money. And she's got no self-esteem whatsoever. Sometimes wife number 1 will take her as a slave, especially when she's young. If she's like 19, 20, she will turn that woman into a slave. She will say, look, I'll accept you, but I own you. And she will get that woman to do all the cooking and all the cleaning and looking after everything in the house. She will treat her so badly. But because the woman is so codependent, she will tolerate the abuse of narc wife number 1. She will tolerate it. Again, I've seen that. I've seen that happen. And actually, the woman who was the victim of narc wife number 1, they came from Algeria. So she was from a very poor village in Algeria. And the narcissistic wife said to him, you need to accept that I, stipulate the rules in this house now. And she's the one who's going to do all the cooking. She's going to do all the cleaning. She's going to do X, Y, Z. And he agreed. She agreed. They all agreed so that the situation wouldn't backfire on him. He was too terrified of his wife. Too terrified of her. So she became a long-term servant to wife number 1. And the wife number 1 had a free maid for, I think it was like 10, 15 years. I can't remember. But that wife, that poor second wife, came out absolutely emotionally crippled from that situation. She ended up going to hospital, and she was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer from all the stress and the bad treatment that she went through because her codependent husband couldn't stand up for her. And wife number 1 was military with her. She was like the evil stepmother because she was much older, and the second wife was, very young. So you get that as well. You see that as well in, like drama series, Indian drama series and Arab drama series. You see how sometimes the second wife, who's very young, gets manipulated and taken advantage of by the first wife, and she uses her as a slave and as a maid because, the man is so weak that he just, he doesn't want everything to backfire on him, and he doesn't want to lose his children from wife number 1. So, yeah, it's a horrible situation, but that can happen as well. Now, in Muslim communities, you will always find, more often than not, the Muslim men who have more than one wife, they are narcissistic with the religious and pious facade. So these men could be students of knowledge, right? They could be imams, they could be preachers, they are YouTubers, people who have a platform, people who are, they just they're involved in the dawah scene. They are getting fed all the time this information about fitna this, and haqq this, and wife this, and women this. Yeah, it's like constant. These guys who are involved in these types of communities and dawah scenes will always be told and encouraged to take on more than one wife, if he's unable to restrain his desires, if he's got a problem with his self-discipline, and if he just can't stop looking at women, or if he's a porn addict, what will people tell him? What will imams tell him? Yahi, you need to go and get a second wife. They don't advise him properly and encourage him to do the right thing, in regards to solving his issues. No, it's straight to, Yahi, go get another wife. And he will be your average Akhi Abdullah who works in a chicken shop and has no money to his name, no business to his name, but he's constantly complaining about the fitna. And we're talking about the fitna of women on social media, the fitna of women who go out in mini skirts in the summer, the fitna of him not being able to lower his gaze, the women who come into the chicken shop who flirt with him at the counter, all that kind of stuff, right? He's complaining about that kind of fitna. And he is getting advised to take a second wife before he falls into zina. Right. So in this situation, your average Akhi Abdullah, who can just about survive on his own salary, he lives in a 1-bedroom flat in a very bad area of London. He's unable to give his wife more than £100 a month in allowance because he can't afford it, and is constantly complaining about the money she spends on herself, possibly from her own salary, because he needs help with household expenses, is looking for a second wife. The dude who is always seen in a tracksuit and his Nikes, yeah? The guy who was always down at the gym, that Akhi Abdullah is the one looking for a second wife. And he will use it to his advantage that he's a student of knowledge. He might be a young guy who is infatuated with the idea of having more than one wife. So instead of people advising him to work on himself, build up his career, build up his money, to get a better job, to give his wife a better life than she already has, lots of men are encouraging their friends and family members to go and get a second wife, especially when the Akhi Abdullah is complaining about his wife. He's complaining about her. What does he say? He's like, Akhi, my wife never has time for me. Every time I go home, she never dresses up for me. She says, I don't have time. She always smells of onions and garlic from the cooking. She is always too tired for intimacy. She's been so busy with our child that she's not had the time to clean the house, or she's been spending all day cleaning the house and now she's too tired for intimacy, or she's spent all day running after, 5-year-old Umar, that she's so exhausted when I come back and she's just not up for anything. These are the kind of complaints that men take to their friends. They might also say, Akhi Abdullah, she doesn't obey me. She's so argumentative. She's not submissive. What do his friends say? Akhi, take a second wife. You don't have to be dealing with this. Teach her a lesson, Yahi. Teach her a lesson, bruv, and get a second wife. They push that guy to do that. And what else do they push him to do? Go and find a woman who's got a council house. Go and find a woman who's in a hostel. Go and find a woman who already has accommodation. Go and find a woman who is so desperate to get married, even if she's much older than you, bruv. She will be your second wife. You don't have to worry about paying for her rent, paying for her bills. She's just desperate for a man. Go and marry her, misyar. You don't have to do no wedding, no nothing, because she's so desperate. Problem solved. And this is what happens. This is the new source of supply in a narcissistic polygamous relationship. Okay, so this type of man, this Akhi Abdullah, will go out of his way to search for that type of woman who is independent. She might be older than him. He doesn't care. He's not looking to have any kids from this woman. He just wants a woman who can financially provide for herself and who is just so desperate to have a man, right? She is willing to compromise on all her standards just to have average Akhi Abdullah, the guy who's good looking, the student of knowledge, the guy who goes to the gym, he's got a good physique. Oh yeah, she'll accept that. There are plenty of women out there who do that, unfortunately. Please go back to my podcast about the invalid misyar marriages, guys. Because it's these women who are the new sources of supply. When a guy is broke, when a guy doesn't have enough money to be able to afford having a second wife, they seek these types of women. The older, desperate women who would do anything just to have a husband, anything just to have a man, anything just to, have their sexual needs fulfilled. They will literally scour online apps for these types of women, okay? They form a deal with these women, they love bomb these women until they get their foot in the door and they secure a second wife with no investment whatsoever because the love bombing was enough. These types of men know that these lonely women who are in their 30s, 40s and possibly 50s just want a man to love them. They just want a good-looking guy who will love them and be company for them. So all they have to do is put on their best love bombing act. That's all they have to do. And the woman will say, you know what, don't worry about providing. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. I've got it covered. Just come and visit me X number of times in the week and it's sorted. So this has become like a phenomenon amongst narcissistic Muslim men. Like, it's their secret. They tell each other, find these women. These women are going to give you free access to the privileges of having another wife. So instead of them telling Akhi Abdullah to build up his career and his finances so that he can provide some help for wife number one, he can take wife number one out of work if she's so exhausted from that. He can help her with childcare. He can help her with house maintenance. He can help her with, providing a cleaner to help her with, the laundry and the washing and all of that. Instead of doing all of that to help wife number one so that she has more time for him, so that she has more time to glam up for him and smell good for him and look good for him when he comes home, he gets the worst advice or the fantasy. He wants to fulfill that fantasy of having a wife like that who comes with no financial demands because his friends have done it. So in this situation, if you're a woman in this situation, you will be bullied into accepting it because he does not want to let go of that woman who has given him wife privileges for free. Why on earth would he let that go? He's not invested in that woman. He's getting it all for free. He's going to hold on to her. And this type of man is the misogynistic red pill Muslim man. Okay, I'm talking about the red pill guys here, and they are the majority of men who want more than one wife. I mean, I've heard some really funny stories about reverts who have jumped onto apps like Muzmatch, and they've matched with women, and in the first conversation they're like, hey, just so you have a heads up, I'm looking to have a second wife. Dude, you've been Muslim for 5 minutes. Literally, he entered Islam like 2 days ago. 2 days ago, and he's already talking about second wife. You've not been a Muslim for 5 minutes, and that's all you can think about. So be careful of falling into the trap of being a co-wife to a narc Muslim red pill man. Okay, because there are plenty of them out there, plenty. And these marriages are invalid. I'm telling you, they're invalid in Islam. You can't have secret marriages. When women give up their rights to become second wives, they fall into two categories. The first category is the narcissist. So the narcissistic Muslim woman who accepts to be a secret second wife and she gives up a lot of her financial rights to have a man, that's usually the back burner supply. Okay, again, go back to podcast 58 for you to understand what I mean by back burner supply. She's the woman he's known for a while. Okay, she's the woman who's jealous of you. She's the woman who really wants to twist that knife in you by making it known, by the way, I'm his second wife now. And the back burner supply would be so obsessed with him, she'll be a narcissist as well, so obsessed with your husband that she will accept to compromise on so many things just for the satisfaction of having him. She knows he can't afford her. She knows that he cannot afford to get another wife, but she will accept him just to show you that she's won him. She'll be the back burner supply, the woman who's always been there in the background. She'll be a woman that you know. Okay? She'll be a woman that you know. Now, the new supply will be a codependent woman who is lonely. She may be, again, never been married before, in her 30s, 40s, 50s. She may be a single mother. She might be a widower. And she's quite vulnerable. She stays in her apartment and she's just looking for a man to protect her and, just be company for her. These types of women are not narcissistic. And that's why I say to women all the time, don't always hate the new supply. The new supply is also often a victim, just like yourself. She's got no clue. She may not even know that he's married. Do you know how many men lie about their marital status online? So many women find out that he's already got a wife and kids after she's married him. So you get a lot of these guys. Again, this is why I hate marriage apps. Just all these dating online apps, just a complete disaster. So many men lie on these apps. They're already married with kids. They're looking for that secret wife who is desperate for company, desperate for love. And there are plenty of women out there like that as well. I'm going to make a podcast, inshallah, about this issue because it doesn't just affect women, it affects men as well, about, empathic and codependent Muslim men and women who are lonely and they don't know who to marry because it's hard to find an empath. I will come on to that, inshallah. I'll make a podcast about it. So the new supply, like I said, more often than not, it's the codependent. And if she is narcissistic, she'll be the back burner. Now, the only time the new supply will be a narcissist is if the guy already has money. Okay? He's good at love bombing and he has money. That's the only time a stranger will accept to be a second wife as a narcissistic woman if he comes with some sort of benefit. And it's usually financial. She might be broke, she's not working, and she just wants a man who can give her money and provide her finances for her rent, for her bills. Yeah, in this situation, a woman may accept to be a long-term secret wife while being a narcissist. So if he doesn't have money to provide her with her own house and all her financial rights as a Muslim wife, even just as a wife, like even if he marries someone from Ahl Kitab, I'll come on to that as well. My God, I'm going to do a podcast just about these, men who marry from so-called Ahl Kitab. If he doesn't have the money, but he manages to secure himself a narcissistic second wife, be 100% sure that she is the back burner. She'll be your friend. She'll be your neighbour. She'll be your cousin. She'll be his ex. She'll be a so-called friend, a friend that he's known from college or uni or something like that. She'll be the back burner supply that he will marry behind your back. Or the woman that he's always wanted to marry, but his family never accepted. Okay, that narcissistic woman, he'll come round to marrying her and taking her as a second wife because she's so obsessed about him. So that's the difference between a man who has money and a man who doesn't. Now, the only reason why a misogynistic Muslim man would take a second wife who is narcissistic would purely be for looks and sexual gratification. Okay, so when the first wife, the main source of supply, is the codependent with no self-esteem, and she's the one who tolerates abuse, and she's submissive and obedient to crazy levels because he is so unbelievably controlling. This is when he can afford the luxury of taking a risk on marrying a woman as the side piece who is a 10 out of 10. She looks like a model. She's very pretty. And that narcissistic woman is getting money. She's getting more money than you because he has to invest in her to keep her. Even if it's temporary, he doesn't care. But as long as he can have some time with a narcissistic woman who is the trophy, right, who gives him everything that the first wife is not giving him because he needs her to stay codependent, He needs her to stay submissive and obedient. The second wife, the narcissist, she's not going to be submissive and obedient. She's not going to be nurturing and caring and loving and forgiving and patient with him. Oh, then none of those things. But she will give him the sexual gratification. That's why most of these men, I would say 95% of these types of Akhi Abdullahs, they only marry for sex. That's it. They just want sex as their main source of supply when they take on wife number 2. Because they could easily fix the situation with wife number 1, but because narcissists have to have more than one source of supply, they will manipulate and spiritually abuse the first wife when she eventually finds out that he's taken a second wife, or when he tells her, because these men don't worry about their first wife going anywhere. She's so codependent. He will tell her, by the way, I got married. Or by the way, I'm going to get married. And there's nothing that you can do about it. If you don't like it, go and argue with your God. Go and argue with your prophet, because it's my haqq. That's what they believe. They believe it's their right. Oh God, another podcast about this, inshallah. So they will make a woman, a codependent woman, feel so awful about not being able to accept him having a second wife, from a spiritual perspective, from a religious perspective, like, oh, you hate Islam. You're a woman who really hates Allah. You really hate the Prophet. You hate being Muslim, don't you? When she expresses any distress and anger and disapproval of him having a second wife, this is when you're going to get all the spiritual and religious abuse. You will get hammered with these statements that, you must really hate Allah. Oh, your true side is coming out now. The truth within you is coming out now. You really do hate being Muslim, don't you? You really hate Islam, don't you? And they will hammer you with it for so long until you break down. And then you start doubting yourself. And then you start believing, yeah, he's right. It's me who has the problem. He's right. Maybe I do have a problem with Islam. I need to go and repent from this. It's his right. He should go and have a second wife. You see, that's what happens. Spiritual abuse happens with women who are codependent, especially when that codependent woman is a practicing Muslim. He will know from which angle to spiritually and religiously abuse her. I can't count how many times I've had people tell me this, that they've been told that they are women of the hellfire, that they have committed kufr by not accepting him having a second wife. That they are hypocrites, munafiqun, or munafiqat, because they are unable to accept what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for men. Okay? From their perspective, obviously. This is not Islam, but a podcast for another day. So this is when a lot of women fall into the trap of having to accept the new supply, the narcissistic new supply, who now causes a lot of fitna in the marriage, or another codependent woman who is also another victim. Okay? So when the second wife is the back burner supply, the narcissistic back burner supply, you better believe she's going to cause a lot of problems in the first marriage, because she'll be jealous. She'll be jealous, and she will stir up so many problems to irritate wife number 1. She will start posting on social media about all the places that she goes with the guy, what he's buying her, what he's doing for her, all their romantic trips. Trust me, she'll plaster that all over social media. The codependent wife won't do that. The codependent wife who just wants someone who, for company, she may not even know about the first wife. She's not going to be the type to do that. But the narcissistic wife will. She will want to get under the skin of the first wife. And what will happen is slowly she will start manipulating him and encouraging him to divorce the first wife, even if there are children involved. She will get in his head. This back burner supply, I promise you, will get into his head until you are divorced from Akhi Abdullah. Not like you've lost anything anyway, right? Good riddance to him. But what I'm saying is that if you're codependent, you will be holding on to that marriage for your dear life. The thought of divorce terrifies you. The thought of what people will think terrifies you. And the thought of being a single mother will terrify you. So you will hold on to that marriage like your life depends on it. Even though it's not even worth staying for 5 minutes with a guy like this. But you are now in competition with this back burner supply who he's taken on as a second wife. And it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting because he's now triangulating you with her. He's now dropping hints, saying things like comparing you to her. He is spending more money on her. There's no equal treatment here. Trust me, with any misogynistic narcissist, there's no equal treatment. You can forget about that. You can forget about that because he will invest more in the narcissistic woman to keep her than he will in the codependent woman who's already there as a slave for him. There's not going to be any equal treatment here. He will invest far more in her than he will with the codependent. And that's why a lot of women, like a lot of clients I have, they tell me, we found receipts of items that he's buying the second wife who's narcissistic. He's buying her jewelry, he's taking her on holidays, he's, really splashing out on her. They're seeing it in bank statements and, receipts that he's stupidly left around and realizing that they're not getting equal treatment. Now, when a man does this, he is the one who causes the fitna in a polygamous relationship with his wives. Because now he has started the fire of jealousy in wife number one. Why don't I get jewelry? Why don't I get these gifts and flowers and these holidays? Why is it that the second wife gets all of these things? And this is where conflict happens. Conflict doesn't happen out of nowhere. I'm telling you, I've seen empathic men have more than one wife for genuine, valid reasons, by the way. Sometimes it's the first wife who's very unwell and she can't give him any of his needs, or she really can't have children and he's desperate to have some children. So, they've married women for valid reasons as second and third wives. But the women all get along. The women get along because they are 100% sure that the man that they've married is a God-fearing, wonderful, kind, empathic man who treats them all the same. They're not jealous of each other. They all get on. Their children get on. They help to look after each other's children. That's what happens when the man in a polygamous relationship, in a polygamous marriage, is an empath. You don't have to worry about what he's doing with other wives. He makes sure that he follows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidelines when it comes to equal treatment of his wives. There is no fighting. There's no black magic. There's no bickering. There's no jealousy. There's no suspicious behaviour, snooping on each other, digging out information about each other, stalking each other on social media. I'm telling you, I've seen people who have made it work really well because they are people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not marrying for sexual gratification. They're not low-class people like that. I'm talking about high-class people who have morals and dignity, and they're highly respected in their homes and in public. It is only low-class men who will chase women for sexual gratification because it's just seen as something vile in an upper-class or high-class society. So it's behaviour that's associated with the lower class. So you won't find empathic men who treat wives like that or treat women like that. They honour women. So when you have your average Akhi Abdullah in a polygamous marriage, he's going to triangulate everybody involved. And sometimes this same Akhi Abdullah gets lucky and he finds more than one woman who is lonely in her 30s and 40s and 50s, the widower, the divorcee, the single mum, and she's willing to compromise on her financial rights because she's got her council flat or whatever. Sometimes they get lucky and they have more than 2 wives whom they juggle between each other, but there's never equal treatment. There's never equal treatment. He might not sleep with one because he's so fed up with one of them, but he will sleep with the other. And he will give, like I said, gifts and privileges to the other, and allowances as well. That will happen until the wife who has compromised on her rights gets fed up, kicks up a fuss about why she's not being provided for. She would have accepted it from the beginning. But once she's love-bombed him, once that narcissistic woman, that back burner supply, has got her claws firmly into him, she's brainwashed him and love-bombed him enough, that's when she'll start asking for her rights. She'll say, hey, you provide for wife number 1, I want the same rights. And he's like, well, you told me that you compromised on your rights. And she'll say, well, if you want to keep me, this is what you have to do. Now, by then, he's so manipulated, even if he's a narcissist himself. If she's more dominant than him, which is more than likely because she's now the trophy wife, who's pretty and, she's the woman he's always wanted, she's always been in the background, he's going to bend over backwards and provide for her. And sometimes that means taking money out from the allowance of wife number 1. Can you see how it just becomes so messy? So he will do whatever it takes to keep wife number 2, even if it means him taking on another job. Now, he wouldn't do that for the first wife because she's codependent and she has to shut up and accept the rubbish life he's already given her. She can't ask for more than basic minimum. She cannot dare to ask him to take on a second job so that they can have a better quality of life. No. But when it comes to the back burner supply, when she tells him, you better take on a second job to provide for me now, he'll bend over backwards and he'll do it. And what that means is that wife number 1 will see less and less and less of him because now he's got 2 jobs and he's busy with wife number 2, possibly wife number 3 as well. She hardly gets to see him. More problems happen. Far more problems happen. So because wife number 1, the codependent woman, doesn't understand what's happening with the back burner supply, she's now causing problems because she feels that her needs are being neglected, her rights are being depleted, and problems happen. Now, in this situation, he will start to threaten her and say things like, if you don't want to be divorced, you better fix up. This is when she knows about the second wife. He will just keep threatening her with divorce. If you don't stop this and that, you're going to get divorced. Knowing full well she doesn't want the divorce. Knowing full well that she's terrified of what people will say and maybe she's got nowhere to go. This is where men use the threat of divorce again and again and again to keep wife number 1 in check, so that she no longer kicks up a fuss about wife number 2 and the problems that wife number 2 is now causing in the relationship. Sometimes wife number 2 is a narcissistic woman who is also displaying a very religious facade. So she will cause fitna in the marriage with wife number 1 by constantly telling the husband, how can you let your wife go out like that? How can you let her wear a purple abaya? How are you, a man, if you let your wife go out without a niqab on? And now the husband goes back to wife number 1 and starts demanding that she wears a niqab, that she only wears black abayas, that she doesn't go out with friends or this or that, because wife number 2, the very religious one, is planting seeds in his head to cause problems in his marriage. So she will say, again, she'll just push him by saying things, you're not man enough. Are you a dayuth to let your first wife go out like that? And, he would have been fine with her doing what she wanted to do and wearing what she wears until this woman comes along, causing fitna in the first marriage. So it can get very messy and toxic when wife number 1 already knows about the second wife. And this is where all the threats will keep coming. If you don't, fix up and accept the situation and be a good Muslimah and be a good wife, you're just going to get divorced. And he feels confident enough to be able to say this because he sees how much the back burner supply wants him and wants to stay in that marriage. Without realizing that as soon as this back burner supply gets what she wants from him, she's going to discard him. How many times have we heard that? Where the back burner supply, she comes into his marriage to ruin the marriage with wife number one, or cause loads of problems, cause lots of fitna, and she then discards him afterwards. She says, well, you're no longer interesting to me because I'm only in this dynamic because it's a challenge for me. It's exciting, it's entertaining for me to come in and win you as the prize, see your marriage get destroyed to the other one, and then I leave and do the same thing to someone else. That is what the husband is not prepared for, because the narcissistic wife, the second one, will always discard him eventually. When she gets what she wants out of the situation, that's what she's going to do. Now, if she's the new supply and she's narcissistic, she will discard him after she's gotten what she needs from him. So if she's in it for the money, if the guy has money and she's managed to get back on her feet, she's got everything that she needs now, and she finds a better option later down the line while she's married, she will divorce him, discard him brutally for another man, even if that other man is married too. These women latch on to loads of married men to get what they need, and it's usually money. So when the new supply doesn't really care about the first wife and only cares about the money, when she gets what she needs out of the situation, she will discard the guy. She will discard this husband. And this is the discard that makes this type of man really angry. This is why you see a lot of men on social media and on YouTube do a sudden 180 on women when they were for women's rights in the beginning, and all of a sudden they turn against women. All of a sudden, women are the most evil creatures on the planet. All of a sudden, they are campaigning against the rights of women in the sense that, they teach men how to just treat them like farmyard animals. Women do not deserve more than basic minimum. Women do not deserve to be put on a pedestal. Women do not deserve to have this special treatment from us. All women are the same, bruv. Treat them like this. They're always after your money. They're always after what they can gain from the situation, and you'll end up with nothing. This is what they teach men. These men have been burnt by these women, especially the second wife. If they've taken a second wife on and she turned out to be a narcissist who manipulated them, and it hurt them to be discarded for another man who had more to offer, especially if he had to sacrifice his relationship with the first wife to have the second one, and he went through a lot of problems with the first wife to have the second narcissistic wife. Boy, these are the men who will do a 180 on women, on their views on women. And that's why you see some guys online on YouTube, they were fine. They were fine with women before. They were teaching men how to respect women and how to honor women and all of that. And then all of a sudden, they switch. You think that's from nothing? It's from a situation like this, where they've been burnt because they've been used, manipulated, and then discarded. And they realize, wow, that woman really played me. She played me so well. And he had fallen in love with her, especially if she was beautiful. He would have fallen in love with her, and he would have been really burnt by that experience. Now, if the first wife does not know that he's taken on a second wife, he will keep threatening her to take a second wife. Okay? So maybe she's already in the wings, whether she's the back burner or the new supply. And in order to control the first wife and manipulate her, he will keep threatening her to take a second wife if she doesn't fix up. So in this situation, instead of him threatening to divorce her because he already has his second supply and she knows it, and now she's in competition with the second supply because she doesn't want to be divorced on her account, he will start to threaten her with taking a second wife. If you don't do this, I'm taking a second wife. If you don't fix up, if you don't obey me, if you don't do X, Y, Z, or if you keep doing X, Y, Z, I'm going to take a second wife. Now, some men here just call their bluff. Just call the bluff of the women, and there is no second wife here. But it's just to keep that woman in line and in control. He knows that it's going to be very difficult for a man in his situation who doesn't have the money to find a second wife, okay? He'll just call her bluff and there'll be empty threats. Now, the second type of guy will be the one who's already got the second wife, but she doesn't know about her yet. This is where he will keep. Again, he's too comfortable now because he's secured the second supply. So he will just keep threatening her again and again and again. If you don't do this, I'm going to take a second wife. And it will be all your fault if I do. So not only is he going to take a second wife, but he's now blaming wife number one for it. So he knows eventually she's going to find out about the second wife. And if she does, and when she does, you best believe it's going to be your fault. Because you haven't done this for me, and you haven't done that for me. So your punishment, because you didn't comply, because you didn't listen, the second wife is already there. But he's manipulating her by saying that if you don't do all of these things for me, because he wants he wants more supply, that when you find out one day that I've taken a second wife, it's going to be your fault. So now the first wife is in a panic. She doesn't want him to take a second wife. She ups the fuel supply for him. Now she goes above and beyond for him so that he doesn't take a second wife. But during this entire time, she's already there. Wife number 2 is already there. And this is where, women get so burnt out and they go through so much guilt and they go through so much pain because they live in that paranoia of, when they see their husband on their phone and they're laughing or they're like, oh my God, is he talking to another woman? She'll live in paranoia the whole time. She'll live in paranoia wondering, am I doing enough to stop him from having a second wife? And this can bring on illnesses for women. This can bring on illnesses because when a woman lives in that kind of situation where she is continuously thinking about and fearing the reality of him having a second wife, it can make her sick. It can make her really ill from stress and from jealousy and from, having to overwork now and overcompensate because she doesn't want to be the one who is to blame if he ever did go and get a second wife. And then when she eventually does find out about the second wife, in most cases, the women do blame themselves for it. They say, you know what, it's my fault. It's my fault he went and got a second wife because I didn't do enough. Had I done enough, he wouldn't have done that. But this wife would have done everything and more than he deserves to keep, for the wife to keep him from doing that to her. So she's trying to protect herself in this situation. She's trying to protect herself from, feeling jealousy and anger all the time and going through all of that pain by doing everything that's needed to stop him having that second wife. Can you see how cruel men are in these situations? Because she will eventually find out. These things come out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show wife number 1, especially when she's a good woman. Allah will show her what this man has been doing. And you're telling me that this is Islamic behavior. You're telling me that this is okay in Islam to manipulate and be this cruel to women who are already going above and beyond for you so that you don't do that to them. When the Prophet Muhammad, when he forbade Ali radiallahu anhu from taking a second wife, it was because he knew the pain that Fatima radiallahu anha would have gone through. And this is why in Islam, you have to take the feelings of the first wife into consideration before taking a second wife. Because if you end up breaking home number 1 to have home number 2, you've not achieved anything. You've actually caused more problems in society. Because now we have more single mothers who are being divorced on the account of men chasing their desires and taking second wives for narcissistic supply, sexual gratification, and it's all completely unnecessary. You've broken a family because you are so immature and so vile in your character. You have no self-discipline, and you're going around telling the world that this is Islam. You're going around telling everyone that it's okay to, go behind your wife's back and talk to loads of women and date loads of women because you can have up to 4 wives. And you're telling me this is Islam. And women are being actually manipulated by this. I'm getting women coming to me saying, I caught my husband having an affair with some woman at work. And when I confronted him about it, he said, well, it's halal for me to have up to 4 wives. Why are you crying? Why are you upset? I'm not doing anything haram. I'm dating other women behind your back, yes, because I'm looking for another wife. What is this? What is this? I'm telling you, if this was true Islam, no women would marry Muslim men. Give me the logic behind this being Islamic practice. There's no logic whatsoever behind it. Which woman, unless the man was a billionaire or a prince, would put herself in a situation from the very beginning and accept this type of treatment? Accept that, I'm talking about, pious practicing Muslim women. Who would accept to marry a man who's going to date other women behind her back anyway? And then justify it by saying that, I can have up to 4 wives. No one would. No one would. And this is how you know that this is not Islamic practice. Because no one would get married then. No one would fulfill this sunnah if that was the case. So much abuse happens in these marriages because of how red pill misogynistic men and narcissistic men view Islam, how they understand Islam. And I'll tell you, the majority of them, they know it's wrong. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they feel like they get away with it by being able to justify it. When they justify it, especially when they have influential people who can validate it for them, like, again, these YouTubers and, dawah preachers and imams, when they can validate what they're doing because they're doing it themselves, then they feel like, okay, this is justified now because imam so-and-so is doing this, preacher so-and-so is doing this, and he's saying that it's okay. But deep down they know it's wrong. And deep down they know that this would not be the practice of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But a lot of abuse happens in polygamous marriages. And a lot of people are having to deal with, just evil women whom these men take as second and third wives. They come into the life of the first wife and just cause so much anguish, and they worry about everything. They worry about so much because evil women can really cause so much destruction and damage in Muslim societies and homes. And unfortunately, like I said, these narcissistic men, more often than not, will take on narcissistic women as second wives because to them, this is not the main source of supply. I can play around with this one. I can get what I truly want, which is a woman of my own kind, from my own swamp, because al-khabithatu lil-khabithin. Evil men are for evil women and vice versa. So they have to have a taste of their own evil as well because that's what they're inclined to. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah keeps them for each other. So, they have to have a taste of it. And that's why the back burner supply more often than not is the narcissist. But he cannot put her on the pedestal as wife number 1, as the main source of supply, because he knows she is from his own swamp. I can't. I'm not going to get what I need from her. The source of supply that I need from wife number 1 cannot come from a narcissistic woman. This is for the covert narcissist. The overt narcissist can obtain his supply, his main source of supply, from a narcissistic woman who gives him fame and status and everything, right? The trophy wife. But the covert Muslim narc has to obtain his main source of supply from the codependent wife. So the back burner supply and the new female narcissist who's come onto the scene, they cannot be upgraded to the main source of supply because narcissists can't get what they need from each other when they're covert. Only when they're overt, but not when they're covert. The coverts, they have to have someone they can completely control and manipulate, and the easiest, person to go for in that situation would be the codependent woman who doesn't understand narcissism. Most codependent women do not understand anything about narcissism until they're out of the situation and they try to make sense of what they've been through. And then they're like, oh my God, that is exactly what I went through. And then they learn about narcissism. So most codependent women will not know that they're dealing with a narcissist at the time, only after they get out of the situation and they try to heal from it. So when a covert narcissist knows that another woman is a narcissist, he can't put her on that. It's too risky for him. There's a high risk of rejection, high risk of exposure, high risk of abandonment, high risk of humiliation, and being controlled and dominated by that woman. And the covert Muslim narc will never accept that. He has to always have the upper hand and the power and the control. That's why they're so obsessive and so suffocating to live with. Because they can only be like that with a codependent woman who will tolerate it. Because they know that narcissistic women do not tolerate this. They will get into a power struggle. Narcissistic women have no respect whatsoever when they get into fights with their husbands. They're vile, they're rude, and they easily discard a man in that type of situation. So this is why relationships between narcissists are very short-lived. They're not long-term. And that's why covert narcissists marry codependent women, because codependent women tolerate abuse in the long term. 10, 20, 30 years, some even more than that. So they have to secure the codependent source of supply because that's the lifetime source, the source that they can guarantee will not leave them because they're so trauma bonded. And then the temporary source of supply, the second, third wife, it's fine if they're narcissists because they're easily replaceable. Unless he's fallen in love with her, and that's when they get burnt. So even if he's in love with the second source of supply, who's a narcissist, he'll still get burnt if she divorces or discards him first. He always has to be the one who discards first. Now, when the second wife is a codependent woman, the widower, the single mom who just wants the company, she's got her own house and, she's accepted to be a second wife, or she doesn't know that she's a second wife. When she accepts to be in that situation, because he's already got a codependent wife, if this wife starts to kick up a fuss about not being provided for, even if she was okay with it in the beginning, so unlike the back burner supply and the new source of supply, if they start making a fuss later down the line about not being provided for and not having an allowance, not being taken on holidays and not having children when they said in the beginning, we don't want children, it's okay if you don't pay for us, we've got a house, we just want a man. In that situation with the narcissistic source of supply, remember when I said he will bend over backwards to get a second job and everything to keep the narcissistic supply? When it comes to the codependent, he won't do anything. He will say to her, fine, if you want to go, then go. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if she wants to leave, if she wants a divorce, because now she's just a headache. She's just a headache for him. She's not a trophy wife. She's a woman that he's managed to find on his journey who he can obtain free sex from while he's on the hunt for, the trophy second wife. So when this woman, again, when she starts complaining, she says, what, I've changed my mind. I actually want to be provided for. Or she's lost her job and she asks him for money. And she says, what, I want a sibling for my child because he keeps asking me for a brother now or a sister. She goes to the narcissist and tells him that. And he's like, oh, I'm not dealing with this. All I wanted was, free sex. You came, you offered me yourself. It was a very easy situation. I didn't have to invest anything. I didn't have to make any efforts to have you. You came and you offered, this great situation to me. But you're not the trophy wife, You're not the stunning, beautiful wife that, I've always wanted. You're not the woman who would satisfy my needs outside the bracket of, just having some extra sexual gratification. So you are now asking me to invest in you. You are now asking me to pay for you because you've lost your job. You now want children from me because, your son now wants a brother or sister. Oh, God, no. You can go. I'm not dealing with this. You can go. And then she gets horribly discarded. This codependent second wife gets horribly discarded, like she never meant anything to him. Again, this comes from the cruelty of these covert Muslim narcs who are just out for themselves. They're just out for themselves. I know this might trigger some people, but it's important that you understand why this happened. If you're in this situation, it is so important that you understand why this happened. And this is why, again, I'll say it until I die. Don't ever accept or offer to be secret second wives, because this is how you're going to get treated. You will have no honour. He will not invest in you. He will not look at you as someone valuable. He's like, okay, well, she's offering everything for free. So later down the line, when you start asking for your rights and you start asking for investment and you start asking for, good treatment, he's like, well, you never cared about yourself in the beginning. Where was your self-respect and self-value in the beginning? You want to ask me for it now? A year later? Because you realise now that, these are your rights? No, that's unacceptable. He'll accept it from, again, the back burner supply or the new source of narcissistic supply because he's getting something that he values out of it. He's been manipulated. He's been love-bombed by his own kind. But because the codependent woman doesn't know how to do that, she doesn't know how to do that with a covert Muslim narc, he's not in love with her. He's detached from her emotionally. There's nothing that bonds him to her. Again, it's just a free ride for him. So she's easily divorced. Or she gets divorced. She's moaning and complaining about, the way he treats her. He doesn't see her often. He doesn't care about her rights at all. He sees her once a week, once every 2 weeks, whenever he remembers. He doesn't care about her children. He doesn't even know her children's names, what they like. He never takes them out. He doesn't do anything for them. He doesn't take them to the masjid. He doesn't give her anything. He doesn't gift her nice things. So when she starts moaning and complaining, he's like, you know what, forget this. You're divorced. Enti talaq. You're free to go. That's if she hasn't asked for a divorce first. But either way, he doesn't care. You see? So this is the explanation for that type of vile behaviour. You really have to be smart when dealing with people like this. You cannot be giving yourself away for free to vile people. And obviously you're not going to know that they're vile people from the beginning, but I'm warning you now. I'm warning you now so that you can save yourself and you can save your daughters and your sisters and your aunties and your friends and your neighbours from this horrific behaviour that is, is so satanic. These people are demonic. Any man who can do this to other women is just so satanic in his spirit, in his nafs. And I pray, honestly, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wakes them up one day and they realise that what they're doing is not normal and it's so demonic. I pray that they all wake up. I really do. But until then, I will call them out for what they're doing. Because so many people, so many families are being damaged in the process. So many people are being damaged in the process, guys. And it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable on any level. Not Islamic or moral or social or cultural. It's not acceptable. Because it's these vile people who are actually causing the divorce crisis in the ummah. Because they just don't know how to be men. These are not real men. Wallahi, if we had more real men in our societies, women would fix up as well. I know that there are horrible women out there too, problematic women, but I truly do believe that because men are not men, we now have an epidemic of narcissistic Muslim women too. Because Islam is not being implemented correctly in marriage and in society and in relationships like with parents and other people. Islam is not being implemented correctly. Men are meant to be the qawwamun, the leaders of the household. So if the leader fails in his mission to implement Islam correctly, you're going to get loads of women coming out and rebelling and becoming narcissistic, because now they want the control over the men who don't know how to be men. This is why it's happening. It is the responsibility of the men in our societies to be good leaders, because when men are good leaders, they're respected. And when they're respected, women tend to stay in line, right? Women are less likely to deviate because they respect the man. I'll tell you now, the only people whom narcissists do not harm are the people they respect, because the people they respect are the people they fear. And it is only in that situation will you ever gain the compliance of a narcissist, because they respect you. They won't play their games on you because they respect you. They fear you. They fear you completely humiliating them because you know your worth and you know that you're a leader. So it's just common sense. It's just common sense. So, this is why we have so many social problems now and a very high divorce rate. And this comes with lots of mental health problems as well, because when men blame women for their vile behaviour, it's so that they can escape the accountability for it. So the mental health problems that women end up having is that they spend the rest of their life, or a long period of time after, a divorce, believing that they were the problem, believing that they were to blame for him having a second wife, believing that they were to blame for their family falling apart and their children now having to live with a single mother. So a covert narcissist will program you to believe that so that they can escape accountability for their horrible actions. So they just go on, they skip off to another supply if they're not hoovering you in the process, and you're left dealing with the aftermath of everything, and you're left to deal with the consequences of his own actions. This happens to a lot of good women who did their best in their marriages to keep their marriages together. So, to be blamed and to, go on with their life, believing that they were always the problem, can cause even deeper problems. For example, some women can become suicidal because of this. Some women will lose their faith because of this and just don't want to be Muslims anymore. They might exit Islam because of it, because of how badly abused they were in their marriage, in their polygamous marriage, because now they're thinking, well, if this is Islam, I don't want it. If this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed men to do, I don't want Islam. I don't want to marry a Muslim. I'm going to go and marry a non-Muslim. Do you know how many Muslim women we have now in the UK who have married non-Muslims because they cannot bear to marry another Muslim? They've gone on and married Jews and Christians and God knows who. We have this serious problem right now in our societies where Muslim women are no longer marrying Muslim men because they are saying that it is better for them to be with a nice non-Muslim than with a vile, covert, narcissist Muslim man. Can you blame them? Forget the halal and haram in this, but can you blame them after going through such a horrible experience? This is what's happening. This is what men are pushing Muslim women to do. And this is a part of the satanic agenda. This is what Shaitan wants. He is clapping heavily for the Muslim men who are pushing Muslim women out of the deen, who are pushing Muslim women to go and marry non-Muslim men because they're finding kindness outside the ummah. They're finding empathy outside the ummah. And then sometimes they have to live with the guilt of doing that. They have to live with the guilt because they don't know how to heal themselves after all the trauma that they've been through being married to a Muslim man. So you've got to be careful. And you've got to be careful who you get your advice from as well. Like, I'm seeing all these red pill Muslim women as well on YouTube encouraging women to be second wives and third wives, and get out of here, seriously. What are you doing? You don't realise what you're pushing women into. You don't realise what you're pushing women into, because the majority of men who are up for polygamous marriages are the covert narcissistic men. They're not going to be the empaths, because the empaths are worried. The empaths are God-fearing. They worry about, am I going to be able to treat everyone equally? Am I going to have the time to do this? Honestly, in this day and age, which man has the time to maintain 4 wives, even 2 wives. Which man? Just the covert narc who wants supply. So all those women who are pushing other women, into polygamous marriages have a problem. I'm telling you, they've got a problem as well. It's almost like they're a part of the agenda, because can they not see all the problems that are coming out of, women being in these types of relationships? Do they not see that it's only the minority who actually thrive in polygamous relationships because it's only the empathic men who do it properly? Do they not see it? Yes, they see it, but they don't care. Because they want to be 2nd, 3rd and 4th wives to high-quality men who are already married, but they can't get those men because those men don't want a 2nd wife. They don't want a 3rd wife. So they're encouraging women to accept other women as co-wives to spread their love. No woman's going to do that. No woman is going to give up her empathic husband and risk the 2nd wife being a covert narc. No sane woman is going to do that. Why would you invite another woman into your marriage and risk her being the fitna in your marriage? Why would you do that? There are cases where, women will have compassion for other women who have absolutely nobody. They've lost everyone in war. That's different. But I'm talking about in the West. Why would you expect any good woman to do that for her husband? Unless she's very sick or unless she's unable to have children, then don't ever expect a woman to do that. And even when she's sick and even when she can't have children, she'll still feel jealousy. She still won't want her husband to marry a 2nd woman, even if she knows that she can't give those things to him. Out of her love for him, it's not out of narcissism, out of her love for him, she wants him all to herself. So to expect women to share their husbands with other women is just ludicrous. That's just absolutely ludicrous. Because maybe that woman is awakened and she's like, well, how do I know that these women aren't covert narcissists? How would she know? And then these same women are guilt-tripped, They're saying, oh, if you were a decent Muslimah, if you were, a pious woman, you'd share your good husband with other women. Absolute load of rubbish. Khadija radiallahu anha never did that. There's not one narration where she did that with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Never. She loved him. To expect women to do that and then spiritually abuse them for not doing it is just, absolutely ridiculous. But, our ummah has a very high divorce rate for a reason. And it's purely because we have so many narcissists living among us now. Most women involved in polygamous marriages will be divorced at some point in time, especially if they are good women who have been replaced by the back burner supply who has manipulated the narcissistic husband. And also bear in mind that the 2nd and 3rd wives and however many extra wives he has will also be manipulated with the first. They'll be triangulated with the first one. So when they aren't complying with what the narcissist wants, when they are being rebellious and rude and disrespectful, he will say, oh, my first wife is not like that. My first wife is kind. She's lovely. She doesn't disrespect me. She doesn't get angry at me. She's always there for me. And again, it's just to pit them against each other so that they compete against each other and they get more supply from the 2nd wife, who has to up her game, basically, so that she can keep him. This is applied more to the back burner supply. The back burner supply is already jealous of the first wife. She's the one who's been in the background for a long time, so she's envious of the first wife. So he knows how to manipulate her with jealousy, and he will compare her to wife number 1 whenever she steps out of line. So everyone gets manipulated and everyone gets abused in these situations. And more often than not, the bitterness drives you to stop him from seeing his children, because you don't want your children anywhere near the back burner supply or the narcissistic new supply. You don't want your kids anywhere near that woman. So they start a smear campaign against you. This is where the smear campaign starts. Oh, she's an awful woman. She's a woman of hell. She thinks that she's a practicing Muslim. She wears her hijab. She wears her niqab, whatever it is. But she's taken me to court. She won't allow me to see my kids. Oh, boo-hoo. You get all the victim sob stories of these narc men online. Oh, she doesn't let me see my kids. She has deprived me of seeing my kids in court. Now, I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying that any parent, it's haram anyway, to deprive any parent from seeing their children or having any access to their children, especially when it's your issue with the parent. It's got nothing to do with the kids. Don't drag the kids into it. Like haram, don't put them in the middle of your fight, okay? I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm saying is that there are lots of codependent women who have been oppressed in polygamous situations where they've been so tortured with jealousy, tortured by the new supply or the back burner supply, that it makes them so bitter from all the abuse that they've been through, whether it's spiritual, emotional, physical sometimes, that they just need to get out of the situation. And the first thing they can think of as revenge is to deprive Akhi Abdullah from access to his children, using the excuse that they really don't want their children being around the new supply. They don't like the idea that the new supply is going to get their claws into their children as well and possibly influence them in a bad way. So there are two sides to every story. Not every woman who campaigns for full custody of the children and to block, who blocks access to the children from their father is a narcissistic evil woman. Sometimes it's the only thing a woman can do to save her children from being affected by the back burner or the new supply as well. So it's important that people understand the reasons why, women do things like that in court, because I see there's so much about it now. Father groups who campaign against courts who allow women to block access to their children. So, some women do it for evil reasons, when the guy is innocent, just to take revenge on him for something petty. And some women do it because they felt so oppressed and so abused by a man in a polygamous relationship. Okay, so when you see these victim sob stories online of men who claim that, and these are men who have got more than one wife, by the way, and they're crying over their wife blocking access to the children in court, you've got to ask yourself, stop jumping to the conclusion that this woman is an evil woman at get-go. In many cases, she's not. In many cases, she's a victim. But he's jumped on the victim train to paint her as someone awful because he's launched a smear campaign. He needs people on his side. And this sob story will help him get wife number 3 and wife number 4. They'll feel sorry for him. And they will support him against, the ex, the victim, the codependent ex. And she will be painted as the evil woman. There are lots of women who have really been wronged in these situations. Just the torture of being, of being subjected to everything that he is doing for the back burner supply, and just knowing that she's destroying her marriage. It's enough. It's just enough for her to hate that guy for life. And this is why the punishment for men who are not equal in polygamous relationships is severe. Because you break more than one home in the process. And men like this will, pit them against each other. He compares them against each other. When he's upset with the back burner supply, he will love bomb the first wife. And that's how they're trauma bonded. Because they're love bombed, abused, love bombed, abused, love bombed, abused. And when you're in that cycle, you get trauma bonded. So he makes them all obsessed about him. They say that they hate drama. All misogynistic Muslim men and these red pill guys, they say, we hate drama, we want peace, we want this. Load of rubbish. I'm telling you, it's a load of rubbish. They love the drama. If they didn't love the drama, they wouldn't get involved in situations like this, where they know that when women find out about what he's doing for each one, because he's not being equal, he's not being fair, that he's going to face a lot of drama, and they're going to have dramas with each other. Trust me, these Akhi Abdullahs, they love the drama. They love it. It's entertainment for them. It's narcissistic fuel that keeps them going because it makes them feel so important. This Akhi Abdullah who works in a chicken shop is now being put on a pedestal by more than one woman. Oh my God. He's going to want to keep that going. He's enjoying the fuel he's getting from women fighting over him and arguing over him and competing for him. A lot of these guys, they will take a second wife because they want the codependent wife to work 10 times harder to keep him. This guy will now make the woman feel so insecure that he could divorce her at a drop of a hat if she does not compete with this woman who is giving him X, Y, Z. So he will purposely tell her about things that, the second wife does to keep this woman in the loop, in the trauma bond loop of continuously fighting for the marriage, competing with the new wife and all of that, until she is completely and utterly exhausted from the stress, from the anxiety, from the fear, from not being able to sleep, from the jealousy. All of that, she's developing these illnesses. Now, I'm not doing these podcasts to create problems. I'm creating these podcasts because this is what's happening to a lot of women. And I've got to say something. A lot of men are going to really hate this podcast, especially if they're in this situation. They're going to hate this so much. But I really don't give a flying monkey, because there are women that they are marrying who are losing their iman, losing their deen because of all the spiritual and religious abuse they're being put through. They are developing physical illnesses, PTSD. They have lost everything in their life. For what? For your Akhi Abdullah, who's not even worth being with. Seriously. So these podcasts are for you to just to have an awareness of what you're in. Because if you're finding yourself losing your iman, hating Islam because of all the spiritual abuse that you're going through, if you find yourself getting sick and feeling stuck because you feel like it's your duty to stay in something so toxic like this, then I'm here to tell you that you don't have to put up with any of this rubbish. I'm telling you. And if you feel like you have to stay in the marriage, fine. Just get therapy for it. Get therapy on how to establish very strong boundaries so that you can survive. So that you do not lose yourself in the process. So that you do not lose your mind and your sanity by staying with someone like this and being played and pitted against and bullied constantly because you feel so insecure with another woman being in the picture and because you're so narcissistic. These guys they just don't know how to do it. They're little boys. They're little boys in men's bodies. They don't know how to have successful polygamous marriages. All their polygamous marriages, by the way, are short-lived. You will always find that these marriages don't last very long because they don't know how to sustain a marriage. They don't know how to do this properly. So wife number 2 will stick around for a year, 2, 3 tops. And they'll just keep going through a cycle of sources of supply in this manner. And they will justify it as being halal. This is my right. I can do it. I'm not doing anything haram. And they won't care about how you feel about it. They really won't care. So, you may get contacted as well by the new supply. You may hear things you don't want to hear about. She may tease you, or she may want to make it known who she is so that you realize that she's the woman who's been there all along. She wants to rub it in your face that, oh, I got him in the end. I won him. Yeah? Trust me, that's the back burner supply. So it's all this type of abuse that happens in polygamous marriages. Sudden divorces as well. He might just discard you one day. You'll wake up one day and he's discarded you because the back burner supplies, really worked on him. Or the new narcissistic supplies worked on him. Or you just decide that you've had enough. When you're in these kinds of situations, especially when you're already being treated as a nobody, right? You are being treated as just a maid, a slave, He's not giving you an allowance, or it's peanuts of an allowance. He doesn't allow you to work. He's so strict. He doesn't let you go out with friends. He doesn't. I really need you to evaluate what kind of future you're going to have in this situation. And I'm saying that because I have clients who come to me being in this situation or just coming out of this situation, and they're completely broken. They're completely crippled inside. It's going to take a long time, to help them recover from that kind of abuse. You're not obligated to stay in something this toxic. If the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he demanded Thabit radiallahu anhu to divorce Jamila, his wife, on the basis that she wasn't attracted to him, what on earth do you think the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would have said in this kind of situation? If you are unable to put up boundaries where you are able to get your rights and all your needs met, so that it becomes, less of a problem that he has a second wife, and you're aware of the situation, you're aware of the abuse, you're aware of narcissism, and you're not being affected by it, great. If you can do that, good for you. Honestly, good for you. Because I know that there are lots of women who have nowhere to go, they've got children, and this is why I always really push women to get some independence. This is not feminism. This is not me being feminist. It's from me seeing hundreds of cases where women have nothing to fall back on. No money, no career, no job, no family, no decent family who are loving and caring enough to take them back because their fathers and brothers are narcissistic as well. They've got nothing to fall back on. So they're forced to stay in these horrible, horrible situations. I really push for young women to, gain some independence, because an empathic man won't mind. An empathic man will actually support that. He'll understand that if anything was to happen to him, I'm not saying abuse, if anything was to happen to him and he died suddenly, she's got something to fall back on. She's not 100% dependent and reliant on him. You're foolish to think that it's okay to do that in this day and age. 100, 200 years ago, fine. We had authorities and khalifas who maintained, a social order that looked after single mothers, widowers, and, everyone who was vulnerable. But we don't have that these days anymore. It's hard to get help from charities. It's hard to get help from other people. We live in a time where if you're not independent, if you've got nothing to fall back on, you're in trouble. You're in trouble because your only option is to stay with someone so vile, so abusive, someone who is triangulating you left, right and centre. With who? With people from his own swamp. Why are you allowing yourself to stay in that? Get some independence and save yourself. Save yourself. This is not Islam for you to be, staying in the situation unless you feel like you can. I know women who decided to stay with narcissistic men. They're actually doing okay in the sense that they're just grey rocking the guy because they've managed to put up boundaries. They've been with this guy for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're so trauma bonded to him, and they've got children from him, that it makes it difficult for them to leave, and they have a good lifestyle. So by them putting up boundaries, they manage to, tolerate what's considered to be the norm in their life. I know women who are married to narcs, and they've managed to just keep the marriage going. They're not happy. These are not happy women. They are not satisfied women. They are women who feel like this is better than the alternative, because the alternative is going back to my family, and my family are even worse. Being with my family is, it's a more toxic environment, and I've got no job, no career, no nothing to fall back on. So I'd rather just, stick with this, keep it going, and just learn how to go stone cold. No emotions, no care, no love, no nothing. I just, drift through life with this person, protected because I've got boundaries, but it's settling. You're settling. When you live with a narcissistic person, you're settling. So again, I'm not encouraging people to go and get a divorce because every situation is different. Every situation is different. Some women really do need to stay in their situation because the alternative is more dangerous, it's more toxic. But seriously consider the option of, gaining some independence so that you don't feel like you have no other option. It's really sad that the only other option you have is even worse than what you're already in. So, the next generation of women really need to be clued up on this, because we can't be having people in these marriages anymore. We can't have Akhi Abdullahs making a complete mockery of the deen in this way. When you enable people like Akhi Abdullah to treat women in this way by compromising on your rights and allowing men to marry you for free and taking advantage of your vulnerability and all of that, you're not helping these men either. You're providing a vessel for these men to, encourage their practicing of their narcissism. So it's not just the fault of the men, it's the women who enable it. There are lots of women out there who enable narcissistic behavior in other people. So, we really need to wake up to this. We can't be having more of these marriages. We can't be having so much of this abuse going on in our communities where women are suffering because they feel forced to suffer in a situation that they've been manipulated to accept. Where are our community leaders to protect these women? Where are the imams and the scholars and the preachers and the guys involved in da'wah? Yeah, I'm sure there are people who are campaigning, for the protection of these women, but there aren't enough. Because if I have to make podcasts about this, believe me, it's because there aren't enough men talking about the protection of women and the protection of the rights of women. There is no authority to hold these men accountable for doing this to other women and treating them as objects. So I don't care how pious he looks, I don't care how religious he looks, if he doesn't have the money to take care of more than one wife, and he's preying on women who are vulnerable and who have their own homes and they're much older, this is not a man of God. This is not a man the Prophet Muhammad would have been proud of. He would have been disgusted at these Akhi Abdullahs who are students of knowledge and who are involved in da'wah and encourage each other to, to practice this type of understanding of the deen, which is so problematic. So I just wanted to, create an awareness of the type of narcissistic abuse that a lot of women will go through, and men, when someone else is involved. It's not a pleasant experience at all. If the man is not an empath, a true empath, you can forget having peace in that polygamous marriage. You will always find out that you are not being treated as well as the others if you are the codependent. You will always find out things that you just wished you never found out about. You will turn into a paranoid, suspicious, weird version of yourself because of the jealousy and all the anger that, that rages within you. You might even turn narcissistic because of it. How many women have turned narcissistic because of the revenge that they've started to take on people who have abused them, hurt them, oppressed them? So many codependent women turn into narcissists after dealing with a narcissist. This is why in Islam you have to get out of these situations before the situation turns you into one of them. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us the job to change anyone, and He's not given us the order to tolerate abuse and to tolerate abusive people. Yes, We are all meant to be patient with our spouses. There are things that we can be patient with and things that we can't be patient with. When it's full-on abuse like this, no, this is not acceptable in Islam. This is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expecting you as a wife to accept from a husband. A husband is meant to treat you with honor and respect. And if he's going to take a second wife, he's got to follow certain protocols. He's got to be qualified. I'm going to do another podcast about this, inshallah. He's got to be qualified. Your average Akhi Abdullah is not qualified for a polygamous relationship Islamically. He's not qualified for it because he has all the opportunities to fix marriage number one before he ruins everyone else's life with his irresponsible, childish, immature actions when he just, finds another woman that he can just jump into bed with, and that is his fantasy fulfilled. That's not Islam. If that was Islam, I'm telling you, women would not marry Muslim men. I'm telling you. It just wouldn't happen. What incentive would women be given to marry Muslim men if this is truly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed? There would be no incentive. I'm telling you, no one would marry any of them. So, yeah, I hope, inshallah, this podcast has made sense. I will end it here. I just wanted to, like I said, make a continuation of podcast 58 so that anyone who's in this situation of polygamy can understand it from this perspective as well, when the source of supply are, co-wives. So please do like, share and subscribe. If you found this content helpful, please do send it to people who could really benefit from this, and it might wake them up. Yeah, it might wake them up and understand their own situations, understand their own codependency and narcissism, if they are the narcissist in the situation. If you haven't read my book already, please do grab a copy. So much of this information is in there. It's got all the foundational information for all the podcasts. You can find it on Amazon. It's called The Muslim Narcissist. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, you can just drop me an email to author@themuslimnarcissist.com and I'll get back to you. I counsel both men and women. So if you're finding yourselves in this situation and you need some help, then do reach out and I will send you the information about their sessions, inshallah, and how I can help you. Thank you for everyone who is still listening. I hope, inshallah, you found it beneficial. And until the next podcast, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.